What an inspiring and extraordinary day it's been. I'm really inspired about what I've heard about radiation, because I was just saying to Eileen, 15 years ago I fielded a conference. I've got a small farm in Sussex, and my mad father built an indoor tennis court which we turned into an auditorium. We were holding events like this because we didn't have to charge for people to come. And we had Erica Mallory Blythe and a whole lot of people over 15 years ago talking about the problems of electromagnetic radiation. And one of the people that came was Dr. Barry Trower. And listening to Mark talking is very interesting, because Barry raised the problem of pulse microwave radiation in the form of the tetrasets that the cops were wearing. And actually what happened was, and it was the guy that you were talking about, Eileen, he actually said these were weapons of offence back there in pre-2000. And the Police Federation said they can't be used. What happened? Tony Blair made sure the whole of the Police Federation were sacked, a whole lot of yes men were brought in, and those sets remained as part of police issue. And do you know there were esophageal cancers that occurred from the use of those sets in clusters, never heard of before, because it used to be a 1 in 100,000 event. They got cancers, esophageal cancers, in clusters in police stations. And some of the women that were wearing the sets here couldn't conceive because they were messing up the conception system of the body. So that was going on back in 2000. So it's really good to hear how we've honed our information. I'd like to go back a bit. I'm going to really sort of chop and change what I was hearing, because what I want to do is be relevant and bring something from policing. I don't know if you can see that photograph there, but I've had people when I've talked at events saying I was never a cop. Well, there's the bloody picture 42 years ago. Yeah, you've got it. In my back garden in Crawley, where I was a station sergeant, and that was quite pertinent, that photograph, because I'd refused to go on the miners' strike debacle. I blotted my career. They made me station sergeants, but I tell you what, it was a great job. We had a great bunch of people that I worked through. But let's go back. I joined a constabulary, and a constabulary is very different to a police force. The constabulary idea really came from Sir Robert Peel, the Peelers, Robert, the Bobbies. And what I want to propose this afternoon is we need to bring back our old-fashioned bobbies. The bobby didn't arrest anybody. The bobby did not give out fixed penalty tickets. The bobby acted as the go-between, if you like, between the people, as a bit of an intelligence gatherer, where he did what was part of my Hippocratic oath, was kept the peace. That was the first and foremost part of the oath that I took. We swear to keep the peace, to protect life and property, to prevent and detect crime. That was the oath that I took. Oh my God, what has happened since? And that was in the 60s. Lo and behold, someone thought it was going to be a great efficiency idea if they amalgamated what were a lot of locally accountable police areas. In Sussex, that I know very well because that's where I served. I served originally in East Sussex Constabulary. There were 5 separate forces, 5 separate constabularies, 3 boroughs and 2 provincial counties, east and west. Each of those towns, the boroughs of Eastbourne, Hastings and Brighton, had a chief constable. Brighton had nearly 1,000 policemen and women. Eastbourne, as I recall, was about 400 and Hastings a little smaller. They were per capita numbers that had to be there to cater for the needs of the localities. The chief constables were chosen by the police authorities who were elected representatives of those localities, and they were answerable directly to the localities. Can you imagine what a different type of policing that was? The areas that I worked in, we used to have crime clear-up rates of getting on for middle 90%. Now we don't even log burglaries. So do you think something has happened that was perhaps purposely contrived? Because I'm telling you, it has. It has definitely happened. It's just like the assault that everybody's been talking about here today on humanity. There's an essence of people on this planet who are scared of our innate abilities. Scared, and that was a great talk from Philip, of our spiritual abilities as well as our intellectual abilities. And they've been attacking us. And if anybody had attended some of the alternative viewpoint conferences where I first met Mark over 10 years ago, you'd have realized the attack has been relentless. Well, part of the attack was centralizing policing. So some clown had the idea that they could improve policing, I think not, and get rid of those 5 amazingly independent, locally accountable constabularies and call them one police force. That was the start of corporatization of police and corporatization of everything. So you had the constable disappeared, and you had the officer came along. The officer who was beholden to the corporation, who, and I can remember very distinctly one of the corporate edicts was, you're going to go and collect fixed penalty tickets, or you're going to collect money off fixed penalty tickets, which you're going to issue because of all these damn yellow lines we've put down. I, as a young copper on a section in Brighton, as I was serving then, said, on your bike, we ain't doing that. So they had to go and employ traffic wardens to do that job. But unfortunately, as things have gone on, policemen have become those, if you like, collectors of money. Policy officers, yeah. So I saw that amalgamation and that change. So we gained 1 chief constable from 5 areas. The force, the constabulary became a force, and those forces diminished massively in size, so the service became almost like fire brigading within a relatively short period. I was on a training section, and I started to get people come in front of me that, frankly, I could never imagine would have the ability to carry off being what I would call an old-fashioned bobby. I questioned that, and I found out that part of the process of recruiting some of the people was that they had to have psychopathic tendencies. They wanted 5% of the recruitment to have people that had those tendencies. Now, if you take that on and you look at who runs the riot squads and who makes the senior decisions, you think, were they in the 80s, and I was experiencing it because I was there to train these people, were they in the 80s preparing for what we're seeing now? And I say, absolutely no question. I got to a stage, and particularly after the debacle of the miners' strike, where I felt my job was becoming political, and in spite of the fact that I'd been earmarked for promotion and I would be giving up a pension, I left. later on, because I had such an interest and the experience that I'd had, I had a few things happen to me. I found myself on a demonstration where, and this is very much going to the children and the abuse of children, where the two Hampstead children have been speaking out. And I was on a demonstration outside the church where that occurred. Perhaps you can just play this piece. This was a YouTube piece that I didn't realize was being... Can you get that sound up?
Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Because of the way she's been harassed. I also know that we have child abuse in this country to epidemic levels. I was on Saturday sitting with a former...
Okay, I was filmed speaking to a Met copper, a Met sergeant, and I don't know if anybody recognised the lady to my right, perhaps I won't mention it, but that piece went because I was calling out the Met and listening to what we've been hearing today. I was calling out the Met for their failure to investigate what was clearly, obviously, a crime. I'd sat with Ella Draper, who was the mother of those two children, estranged from the children at that time, and listened to her talking about what her kids had been subjected to. She showed me two independent pediatric reports from high-level consultant pediatricians of the injuries that these pediatricians had found that the children had been subjected to. They both had sphincter damage, which means their anus has been penetrated. And she talked for 5 hours to me in such an emotional way that a mother would, and it was very, very clear to me what had been going on, and it was absolute serial ritual abuse. And if any of you have heard the accounts of those two children, I absolutely believe 100% that they are true. And someone was jailed as a result of actually campaigning to try and get the police to investigate that. They never adequately investigated. Not only is there that case, but I've come across about 5 other cases where children have been abused and the police have turned a blind eye, or they've gone after the mother who dare actually complain about it. And I'm sure Kimberly and Lou have actually had experience of seeing that. We also have systematic refusal of the police to investigate properly serious crimes. We've got the Hillsborough business. We've got that of Prince Andrew. We've got the post office. And we've got more recently the biggest crime, and well done for calling it, Mark. It is utter genocide. This is a book that's only just come out. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And the last time actually I met Liz was in Parliament, where Andrew Bridgen called a group of what I would call the Magnificent Seven in COVID. And many of them have contributed to this book. And they were people like Sir Christopher Chope, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Ryan Cole, Doctors Robert and Jill Malone, Steve Kirsch, Dr. Angus Dalgleish, all pulled together in an amazing event that we were part of on the 5th of December last year. This book has just come out. This is 34 essays that are calling the whole COVID debacle. It's beautifully written. It's written by people that have no axes to grind. And I'd just like to read you from the front. This book is dedicated to all those courageous people who defied the propaganda, who researched the truth, and who spoke out loudly or quietly to inform and warn others against powerful authorities and the ill-advised public health measures which have caused more harm than good. It is also dedicated to all those who lost their lives from COVID, those who have been injured and suffer because they were denied the complete picture. I attended a detoxification conference put on by Tess Lowry. Anybody know Tess, met Tess? Beautiful warrior of the light. Back in, I think it was July. And what came out to me clearly there was that we're sitting on, and as Mark called it, an absolute holocaust, 10 times, 100 times over. But there are good doctors, and they were attending that conference, who have actually protocols to help people get those nanoparticles out of the body. So there is a lot of good that's going on. What my feeling is we're approaching a nexus point, a point where there is so much awareness that those psychopaths who I talked about earlier are under so much pressure now because they've more than blown it with so many of these things happening that we're actually heading toward complete system breakdown. I've been involved, unfortunately, through a divorce or the divorce proceedings in the court system recently. I've also been involved in the court system by pushing back in various circumstances, because what I see is not a court system that existed when I used to give evidence in the 60s and 70s. It's an aberration of what was then and what is now. But I had occasion to put in an application for appeal to the Supreme Court. Apparently there are 1,000 applications that go before the Supreme Court, and only 80 can get heard, because that's the capacity that they have. If that's a form of justice, I do not know. My feeling is we are heading towards very fast a complete systemic breakdown. But I had a teacher many years ago who said, to break through, we first need to break down. And I really know that audiences like this and many others that are gathering around the country, this is not the first time we've done this together, and we often do Zoom calls together. I know we're the ones that are not just going to hold the pieces psychologically, spiritually, in every other way of the people when they become discombobulated and understand what's been perpetrated against them. We're also the ones that are going to formulate the new way and bring back perhaps some of our awarenesses of me having seen policing as it can work, with the ratios and with the right ethos, and start to create something better and a place better for us to live under. And I feel more than hopeful. I feel almost a knowingness this is where we are now. And someone used the term unity. I ran a couple of events, again about 15, 20 years ago, under the banner Unity Now. If ever there is a time that's come for us to unify, drop any differences that we have, and we've all got, you've only got to look at what's happened between Trump and RFK, and they must have had to have done some pretty serious talking to actually stand on that stage together and say, look, we can work together. That's, to me, a great example of unifying and unity. Okay, what I'd just like to quickly do is to pick up something that Martin mentioned. And he mentioned the toroidal field that exists in a lot of aspects of humanity. We give our heart, when it's coherent, gives off a toroidal field that is felt in quite a large radius around us. it can massively impact the negative aspects of things like EMF if we power that toroidal field up. And if you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to just quickly share how we can do that.
We have to be out for 6 o'clock.
Okay, this is 30 seconds. Okay, to power our toroidal field up, we need to take our thinking from our head to our heart. And maybe as we do that, we can put our hand on our heart and just breathe. Sorry?
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just breathe that feeling of peace and of love in through our heart. And do that for a few seconds, and we've reset the toroidal field of ourselves. We can help other people, and it's also a great de-stressor. Thank you.